Welcome everyone. I'm gonna present you the VST shop as a sound design tools for your project. So I do a little summary to do that. So I'm gonna present myself. I'm gonna present like the base of the VST shop and some details, and I will give you an example and a demonstration, and of course a conclusion. So my name is Léo Lecroq. I've got 22 years old. I'm French. I've got degrees, so an Higher National Diploma in Audiovisual in Sound and a Bachelor of Art of Cinema, so two things in cinema but in sound. And currently I'm in master degrees in digital creation. I try to implement TouchDesigner into my art because I'm really interested into the random in art. So I give you just 3 examples of what I'm doing. So the first one, Merci de ne pas caresser les nuages, is a project who use Unity in VR and TouchDesigner and some it's Houdini to generate mesh. So for example, for this one, just the floor texture it generates in real time with TouchDesigner. And the other two is just a projection, but that's it. And the thing is, when I do projection, I think it miss something. It's the sound. And with the VST shop, I can use sound really with interesting manners. So the VST shop is a new chop. It's the chop family, so the signal or the sound family. It's really easy to use. To understand, VST is like a digital instrument, some effect. You can have a lot of things to do with that. You got a VST 1, 2, and 3. TouchDesigner only use VST 3. It's the better one. You got AAX for like Pro Tools, but it's something else. You need to load it, and the thing is, you can use Overchop to control the VST. So it's really interesting in some regards. But before I can give you a demonstration, I need to explain a little bit of what does the plugin do, how does this work, because you need to understand. So I differentiate them with 2 main categories. So the first category, it's when the VST don't need an input. It's the case for an equalizer. So for example, the FabFilter Pro Q3 don't use an input. Sorry, use an input. So I will explain more about it and what does it do after. And the second category, it's some VST don't use an input. So, for example, it's the case for an oscillator. For an instrument, it generates the sound himself. So it's 2 main categories. You need to differentiate them because some it's just an effect, some other it's just an instrument, some it's the 2 cases in one. It's kind of bizarre, but you need to understand this differentiation. So now I'm going to talk more about plugin himself, all the VST you can load into TouchDesigner. So the first 3 one is the first you will see in a sound class. So the first one is the equalizer. It's like the base of the bass. The equalizer lets you cut some frequency of your sound. So for example, you have a C sound and you want to just leave all the high frequency not in your sound, you can do that. So it's really interesting. I will give you just an example after. You get the compressor who the thing is you can reduce loud sound and amplify quiet sound. The thing is you can reduce the dynamic range of your sound. It can be really interesting if you have a lot of sound. So really interesting thing to do. The reverberation or the reverb is when you are in a big house, you hear the reverb, like when you're clapping your hand, you hear like the big room where you are. So really interesting to play with that in some installation. So this 3 above was the more common one, and you got other ones like the frequency shifter, so or the pitch shifter. It depends It depends. So, for example, when you have a 400 Hertz sound, like just a frequency, you can transpose it to have 1000 Hertz. So you can maybe play with that with a cursor, just with the knobs. So it can be interesting. You get the bit reducer, so like his name suggests, you can reduce the bit of your sound. So to have a digital, when you work with maybe a voxel thing, it's interesting to work with that, to have a 8-bit sound. And the other one, with really basic, is the delay. The delay can it's like a river, but more long. So for example, this one, you got second. So for example, when I'm clapping my hands, 1 second after, I will hear my hands, and you can reduce this thing. You can use a ping pong effect, so it will do like kind of like this. I don't know really to explain with word. So that's it for the basic plugin. So now I talk more about the fun plugin. That's what I prefer. So the three above, it's from Output, who developed them. Portal use granular synthesis, so it will take some sample of your sound and repeat them like with a lot of randomness. So it can be really interesting in some glitch art and all this thing. You got Thermal. Thermal, it's kind of the same thing, but more with a compressor. So I will give you an example with Thermal after. Movement, it's kind of difficult to explain what does it do, but for my experiments, it just give a rhythm to your sound. So it can be interesting to, if you don't know how to do some music and just want to have a rhythm, you can use this. Backmask and Pocket Dimension, these are free. They're built by Fraction Industry. They describe their plugin or the VST by just saying that's the sound of hell. So I really cannot explain how this works, but you need to try them out because they're really special in their own way. Sorry. And but can be really interesting in some bizarre and strange project. And Rina, at the end, just literally want to destroy your sound. So it can be really interesting if you want to do some explosions, something like that, like this. So really interesting. The thing is, all this plugin, even the basic one, all has knobs, and all these knobs or this kind of fader, you can use this to map them to control it with TouchDesigner. And that's where it is interesting. As a sound designer, I use TouchDesigner to control the plugin, because all of my DAW, my digital audio workstation, won't let me do that. So for example, I got a lip motion and I can use this. So to do this, I build a simple example and I will do a little demonstration. So I'm gonna change my screen. Oh, I'm not sure if I've got the sound. Yes, I've got the sound. Okay, so now I think you will see TouchDesigner. So I will just take my phone because I use OSC. And so you see that's just a little cube who goes deeper. We can imagine it's a C. So when you go deeper, you can have some kind of the impression to go deeper, even into the sound. So for example, this is the sound without any plugin, with just the sound of a water. When I use my plugin, wait a minute, doesn't work. Okay, so it's all right. Don't worry. Okay, so when I use my VST, so it's like this. So I can show my my plugin. I don't know if you see it, but no, you don't see. Okay, it's not really a problem. So you hear the cube, and when it goes deeper, you hear all the filter affected. So all the high frequency go away. We cut it to have the impression to go deeper. If you go too low, we hear nothing. But you have this to play. So with it's just with OSC with my phone. But we can imagine you can just use it with only your phone and the accelerometer, and just goes deeper like this. So it can be interesting. To make a parallel with sound design, it's like a fader. So just you can go up and down. It's kind of the same thing, but you have, I think, more control and more organic to it. So it can be really interesting. So that was for the OSC. For example, the leap motion, another example. So I just use, so I don't have a leap motion with me now. So to simulate it, I use mouse in. I just don't have the depth parameter. Then you can imagine I use an oscillator who generate a frequency. I use a delay who just modify a lot of the sound and repeat it with randomness. And I use thermal, like I said, the compressor who use random and a little bit of granular synthesis. So this is how it sounds. So you can literally put your hands everywhere. So just imagine it's my hand, it's only my mouse, but you can imagine it's my hand. And in some maybe some installation, it can be interesting to just displace it both with your hands and also the sound of it. So it can be interesting. As a sound designer, again, you can control a plugin with a leap motion. It's really a game changer. We cannot do that before. Now I can do that, and really it's interesting. If I need to work with more organic thing, it's a really interesting thing. So that was for the leap motion mouse in. And the last example is the one with just a keyboard input. So just you push a button, I just put a lag. To the VST, I just put an oscillator and fracture. It's a thing we generate glitches. So just here, without anything, when I push the one button in my keyboard, it will generate the sound. So like this. It's interesting to work with that. And you can use this to use a lag. It's interesting because, for example, as a sound designer, sometimes I need to do some motor thing, and it's kind of difficult to do the motor with. We work with automation. It's kind of difficult because it just curve you just place, so it's kind of difficult. So maybe with just a keyboard in, it's more interesting. So just with a lag in your tool, and you can have some really good render of the sound. So that was the demonstration. And to conclude, so for me, the VST chop is really a game changer as a sound designer. It can really improve the immersion of your project, like we have seen. So it was just a demonstration. I am not really a professional in to TouchDesigner. I just touched it from like 5 months, so it's kind of new to me. But I think it can really improve the immersion of your project and add another level of integrity to your project. Like when a spectator arrives, it can control more than just the visual, but also the sound. And so that's it.
Inviting me to this meetup. Thank you, Leo, to introduction about the VST plugins. So I wanted to talk something about myself. My name is Kamil Kalektika, so I'm a visual production designer. This is like so Okay. Actually, I'm a little bit nervous because this is my first meetup. I never think things like that. So my name is Kamil Kalektika. I'm visual designer. I'm making some visual and generative stuff by 7 years. I producing some generative programs. I produce some automatically programs in nightclub that can control light and visuals by sound, and also I make my own project that also make it in TouchDesigner. So the problem is that the time before I can produce any form of LED screens, like any form of visual, but I can't understand how it better to produce some music because other programs was too difficult for me. I so much love making uh, not based program that you can make something by like Lego structure flow, and there is too much difficult for me using Ableton or something like that. So the time before I just asking my friends to make music for me, make some composition and playing live with that composition. And my problem is I so wanted to make something in a single ecosystem, like produce music and make real-time visualizing in one program. So VST plugins is the best issue that I find now. So it started from this this base. I think it kind of low frequency right now. I will disable. So I can play. This is the VST that previous speaker called fun plugin. This is called like Portal. This VST can produce some sounds like this. Like I put into this filter only wave from audio oscillator and magic that happens after that. So improve me in this case. So let me show you that I get if it will be. I just add VST plugin, and after that I put some audio filters that can make my patch audio reactive. So after I decided to make something new with this plugin, and I make this one. This is a additive synthesizer by MIDI MIDI piano Kai MPC. So this is how it plays right now. Like I can play by case in my piano, and this can place right into TouchDesigner, and after that it can analyze it and put that into visual. Thank you. I think this issue can update and review the approach to making music in TouchDesigner. This issue can make new ways to produce some installation, and you can put it into the live and play it only by using TouchDesigner. I think it's all. Thank you.
I'm one of the founders of Derivative. I live in LA. I'm from Toronto originally, but I've been in LA for a long time. And over the years, been focused on production tools, UI performance, and UI systems, and SDI and all that kind of production workflow stuff, but really interested in the connection between music and audio and visual systems. So I'm really excited about the VST projects because, I've been working with, for example, Richie Houghton over the years. We started building stuff in Ableton a long time ago using spreadsheets and MIDI devices, and then TD Ableton came out by Ivan DeWolf, and that was a big step forward. So this is kind of the next big move into audio world, is supporting VSTs. So I'm excited today to show you guys. Show you guys. Oh, should I be sharing my screen, or am I sharing my screen?
You're not sharing yet.
Okay.
Depends on what you want to show.
Right. And today I'm going to be showing you some new stuff because we've added some new features into the new version of Touch, which is coming out soon. And I'm going to step through. So the one thing that, it's good. I'm really happy the presentations were focused on things people were building. I'm going to step back and kind of show everyone how these things kind of build out from scratch. So to start, just the current way things work. If you want to see a basic setup, you can go into the tools palette and grab the VST host. And this is kind of the basic setup right now. It's always a VST, audio VST chop. You can load either an instrument VST or a filter VST currently. And then you'd go audio out. And then what you would do to the instrument VST is you have to send it MIDI notes to have it trigger the audio. And you can do that by either sending a keyboard, like setting up a MIDI and then just sending keys in via keyboard. Or I built a really simple sequencer, which if I hit start on the timer here, you should hear the instrument VST outputting stuff. And that workflow is pretty cool because you can make your own sequencer. You can make your own sequencers in Touch. But the cool thing is now we support clock. So we can send clock to VST. And therefore we can drive things like sequencers, sequencer VSTs. So let's take a look at how we would go about building a network like that. Okay, first of all, you always need a VST, audio VST chop, and then you need a plugin. So I'm going to click plus. It's always going to open to the same spot, which is this common VST folder. And I'm going to grab the high poly, HY poly. These high plugins, we actually got permission from them to include some of the free ones in TouchDesigner. There's also the paid versions. I highly recommend coming here, go to the download page. The two plugins that we're going to be using today are the free version of the high poly, which is a synthesizer, and the Seek 32, which is a sequencer. I'm going to show you how to plug these together. Okay, so from here, you just put it into an audio device out. And then we should, I'm going to bring this level down. And then you go to the display GUI, plugin GUI, and just now we've got a sound. So now to make some music or anything like music, then you'd have to send it these notes in sequence. And you can do that with a keyboard, like I said, but here's the new workflow for sequencing. So again, grab an audio VST and let's go get a sequencer. So that's this guy here. And so I'll show that. So if you loaded this sequencer in the current version of Touch, which is downloadable today, this is what you're going to get. So it's not going to do anything. So what you need to do is you need to drive the clock forward, and a new folder in the audio VST chop is playhead. And so this will cause the playhead to move forward. If you turn on custom playhead, then you get the sequencer moving forward. And then you can send the MIDI from here to here, from the sequencer VST to the instrument VST, simply by going into the callbacks here. And when the MIDI note is received, we get a callback. And then it's quite simple. Just say op audio VST1 dot send bytes. So if you just send bytes, then you don't need to really think too hard, because it's just going to pass along the messages, which can be quite complicated. We won't get into that, but there's things like velocity and pitch bend and all kinds of stuff. That's just all going to get passed along to the instrument. And now this sequencer, you can, change notes and stuff over time. Okay, so but it gets a little bit even cooler than that, because of the way that because of a new feature as well in this new version 40K, is we've got timecode objects. And timecode objects, this is, I guess, maybe the first time anyone's heard about this publicly, but timecode objects are going to be passed around TouchDesigner to allow you to synchronize different things, different operators. And I'm going to show you how to play with that here. So all we need to do is grab a timer chop. And by just as I'm going, there's also the new time code chop. So these are kind of, the time code chop is kind of like is the main time code chop, obviously, but all time chops, or most of them, if not all, have time code objects attached to them. So in Python, you would get the time code object by getting the operator .timecode. So I can change the VST playhead to not listen to the global clock from the time component, but instead listen to the timer .timecode. And now if I hit start and hit play, now we're driving the sequencer with this timer chop. And you'll see it stopped. So that's kind of nice. You can actually play a sequence or something like that. So let's just really quickly talk about how you would set up the timer chop to be a sequencer to clock for the VST sequencer. So in the VST chop, it's set to 120 beats per minute. So in this circumstance, you don't control the beats per minute from here. You're going to control it from the timer chop. And there's some quick math that we can do. So I can come here and I'm going to make the length be 2 seconds, because at 120 beats per minute, 1 bar is 2 seconds long. And then I'm going to set it to cycle and turn off cycle limit. And now this sequencer will loop at every 2 seconds. And so now we're clocking this sequence you'll see they're in sync. There's actually a step offset in the sequencer. We don't need to worry about that. And then and you can just hit in it to reset. So we've got kind of like a built-in sequencer now. So as well, if you want to change the beats per minute, you can come here with a really simple expression, which is, I just have some variables here, one of them being BPM. So I can take the beats per minute. So I can type ibar dot settings dot BPM, and then divide it by 120 because, sorry, this should be lowercase. And now we will be running at 80 BPM. So, and you can come here now and you can control your tempo. And if you, you can do things like now add a nudge in, so you can just increase the beats per minute a little bit or decrease the beats per minute a little bit, and you can start to, you know, like synchronize this with any live music or whatever as well. Okay. Yeah, so I think I'm just going to check my photo and make sure that that's everything I wanted to show there. And then otherwise, we're going to move on and take a look at how you can sequence VSTs with a dynamic system in Bullet. Okay, yeah, so that's good. Let's go to the next guy. Okay, so this is pretty simple, actually. It's just a bullet solver. And if I initialize it, you'll see there's a red box there. It's inside of a bigger box. And actually, I'm going to make sure this audio is off here. Audio's on there, good. Okay, so we've got a bullet solver, which is, it just injects a force on the box that's inside the other box, and the box will hit the walls. And the goal was when the box hits, when a wall is collided with, then that collision would generate a MIDI note. And I'm going to show you guys how to set that up. So set up a bullet solver. You're going to have to figure that out on your own. And then when the collision hits, each wall has been isolated as a different collision object.
Can you turn the volume a bit? Because it's,
yeah.
And
then as well, I'm pretty sure the audio will not be in sync. It's in sync for me, but Teams doesn't sync. So let's try again.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so each wall is isolated, and then we extract the collision information and convert it into MIDI information, and then send that to the VST just the same way we did in the last example, where we just get the operator and send it MIDI information. Last case, we just sent the bytes object. In this case, we're going to send very specific information. Let's just quickly look inside the solver. There's one wall for each, there's one wall, and they each have their own material. They're being driven by a single trigger chop here, which when the collision happens, it just sends a pulse, and then you get a little bit of a lagged waveform. It's actually using a trigger. So you get an AD, attack and decay kind of waveform. That goes on to each material. That's all that's going on in here. These are actually not even being used. It's just this object and these walls here. Okay, so really the thing that I wanted to show is the code. So hopefully there's some folks out there that are using Python, and let's just dissect this. So the cool thing with the solver component, bullet solver, is that there's a callback stat, and the callback stat has a collision callback. So when a collision happens, you get a collisions plural object passed in, and what this is it's a list of all the objects that collided, and then whether or not the collision was an impact collision, or if it's just like currently intersecting in a collision. So we were only interested in impacts. So otherwise, there's a lot of collisions that happen where they're just kind of sliding along the surface. And if we didn't want to have a bunch of sound generated like that. We just wanted the hit. So this is a line of code that you can use to extract just the impact. And then you say if impact. So then the other part of the list for collisions are all the collision objects. So the object that's flying inside the box is the collision 0 object. And then the walls are the collision, the second object. And then we can get the owner of the collision is the component itself. And if you remember, the wall components have an index, which is digits, or that we can use as digits. So that gives us back an ID. So now we've got a 0 through 6 index for each wall. So we can we know the wall index. And then we can extract the linear velocity as well. That just comes off the object, and which is a vector, which you can get the length of by doing this. And now we can take all that data and we can map it to MIDI. So how are we going to do that? Well, so let's step back a second and take a look at how we can, or let's think through how we're going to actually connect this. So first of all, I needed a sampler to trigger the audio, right? So that I found a cool plugin, which is here, and it's a cool sampler plugin, and it's called Tal Sampler. It's really lightweight, it's really nice, and it essentially allows you to map samples to each key. So I just went to C0 and put a sample there, and then I mapped C1, C2, or sorry, C, and then C sharp, D, E, and so on. So I also made a table, because you'll see when you're talking in notes in VSTs, you're talking in the note name, C, C sharp, D, so on, and then the octave. So that might be 0 or -1, -2, or 1, so on. So it's the middle C, and then like there's negative and positive from there. So as well, I made a table here, which gives you the MIDI note back from the note name and the octave. And so now if we look back at the code, we can see that I'm just talking to the code with, I grabbed the note number using that simple nomenclature. So I just grab the MIDI note map and then put it in there. So somehow we'll make this table available, probably in snippets. And then you can just talk to your device using a C, or the note name and the index. Okay, so that's what this is. This is giving us back the position of the plugin, or of the keyboard in the plugin at this location here. This is C0. So then if we add so when the collision happens, if we just add 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to this, then we're going to get the different note. Okay, so let's just finally take a look at the MIDI command. So the final command is right here. So in this case, this line is just sending the trigger pulse to flash the wall color. And then audio VST1, we're sending a note on event channel 1. And then that's where the difference in audio mapping happens. And then as well, I'm passing in velocity, which was calculated here, which drives the loudness of the note, and then finally note off velocity, which actually you don't even need that, you can ignore that note off velocity. Okay, and then yeah, I think that's pretty much it. The other thing I just want to point out, to make these sounds trigger and play out the whole distance, you have to know a little bit about how samplers work and the fact that you want this to be a one shot or not a one shot, so that they don't repeat. And you have to be using a sampler that is multi-voiced. So in this case, I had to set the sampler to be multiple voices because they actually, when they collide, they play over top of each other. So there, and then you have to turn on velocity for it to listen to. So those are the kinds of things you have to set up in the VST plugin to work in a dynamic system. So just be aware of that. But in a nutshell, that's kind of the couple things you need to jump through to get a VST hooked up to dynamics. And yeah, I think that's it for now. And we could go over questions later. So thanks. So now we're going to show LFOs controlling a VST or any controller from TouchDesigner for that matter. So I'll turn on the audio here and hit start on our sequencer. Okay, so let's say we wanted to control the cutoff filter here. So what you can do is in the VST plugin for the instrument is go to learn parameters, turn it on, go to the plugin page, and then move the parameter that you want, in this case, cutoff. And you're going to end up with a parameter here. It's often arranged between 0 and 1, even though MIDI is between 0 and 127. But sometimes the ranges are different. So you have to come here and move the fader and just see what the minimum maximum value is. So we can see that it's between 0 and 1. So we can, for example, grab an LFO. And with an LFO, you know it's by default going between -1 and 1. Grab a math operator, go to the range page, make it -1 to 1, then pick the range that you want it to oscillate between. So let's say from here to there. So maybe that's 0.2 to 0.8. And then if we want to control this parameter here, what we need to do is we can't just export an expression to it or export a regular export. We have to use a bind chop, and that's because it's multi-directional. It's coming from inside Touch, but it also comes from the VST, and otherwise you'll be stepping on yourself. So the bind chop has machinery built into it that allows it to do a bi-directional communication with parameters and channels. So you just go into the bind chop, drag, and then go to the extension or to the VST, find the parameter you want to go to. Make sure learn parameters is off, by the way. Otherwise, the next time you move something, another channel is going to end up there. And then grab the channel and drop it onto the parameter and make sure you do chop bind. And now it's controlling the fader. However, it's interesting that I can also fight with this LFO inside of the sequencer. And different VSTs will deal with this in different ways. Some of them will pop it out of listening, and then you'll have to click on a button to set it back to listen and touch. But at any rate, it is bidirectional. And then as well, you'll see you can do things in these plugins once you've done that, where you can actually automate the fader of the frequency with, for example, the MIDI note envelope that's coming in. So I can drop this envelope here and also send that as a modulator in, and then turn up the envelope effect on that. And now we're controlling it with the MIDI note envelope, as well as Touch's LFO, which we can slow down. And decrease the effect there. And now we're getting like the effect of the note, the effect of the Touch LFO. But as well, if you wanted to intervene, you've got that as well. So you've got 3 levels of control. And that's in a nutshell how you do binding of parameters in VSTs. So that's good.